The world of cosmology has lost its most famous star today. Physicist and cosmologist Stephen Hawking has passed away at the age of 76 at his home in Cambridge. Now, Stephen Hawking passed away early in the morning today. The cause behind his death is still not known. However, his family has released a statement which reads, and I quote, "He was a great scientist and an extraordinary man whose work and legacy will live on for many years to come. His courage and persistence with his brilliance and humour inspired people from around the world. He once said that it would not be much of a universe if it wasn't home to the people that you love. We will miss him forever," unquote. Now, Stephen Hawking was diagnosed with a motor neuron disease when he was just 21 years old. At the time, the doctors had predicted that he will live for no longer than 2 years. However, he became well known when he wrote the book A Brief History of Time, and contrary to the doctor's predictions, he would go on to live for at least another half a century. Now, the book has sold well over 10 million copies worldwide and has broken the Guinness Book of World Records for staying on the Sunday Times bestseller list for over 237 weeks straight. Now, apart from his many accomplishments, Stephen Hawking was known for his sense of humour and also his way of dealing with life, which had left him wheelchair-bound. In fact, he had joked that but for the fact that he suffered from this medical condition, he may not have become as famous and popular as he eventually did become. He's also perhaps one of the most famous physicists in the world, with many mentions in pop culture. There was even a movie that was made on him called The Theory of Everything. All right, and for more on this, we are joined in by Dr. Amitabh Ghosh, who is a space scientist on NASA's Mars Mission Control. Now, Dr. Ghosh, thank you very much indeed for joining us. It is indeed a sad day for the scientific community, for arguably the greatest century of our times is no more.
Right, so it's really, it's the passing away of a very big person, a very big scientist, a giant in the field. Of course, he'll be remembered for his work in physics, for his work on black holes. But other than that, he'll be also remembered as a great writer. So, I mean, The Brief History of Time is something you and I have grown up with. This is when I used to go to IIT. This used to be one of the books that was my favorite book. And
absolutely.
So for so many impressionable minds, he broke down a very complex physics concept so that they could relate to it, so that everybody could feel the processes of the universe.
Absolutely.
It's really a very intense book. And we used to joke that in IIT we couldn't get through the whole book. It was everybody could understood up to a certain extent, but even that was something of a revelation.
Absolutely.
And that the way he explained it, and the fact that he could even explain such a very difficult concept to a layman.
Well, Dr. Ghosh, is the fact that, Stephen Hawking was someone who could actually communicate some of the most abstract and some of the most difficult concepts about the universe and make it accessible to the common man. Is that what set him apart?
No, I think more than that. I think, of course, he was a very good scientist. There's no doubt about it.
Absolutely.
In addition, I would say, 2 or 3 things about him. One was his communication ability. So it was almost perhaps in the range of Carl Sagan, the way he could communicate. And then maybe his advocacy for the human species. For example, he gave a call that, humans should become an extraterrestrial species if they want to survive.
Right.
So that's, so you may agree with it, may not agree with it, but it's a very big universe. So his point was that why will humans restrict themselves to one planet?
Absolutely.
And it is thinking like this which germinates the next generation of explorers, like Elon Musk. Elon Musk's vision today, perhaps, I mean, I know he drew inspiration from Armstrong and the people who the astronauts who walked on the moon, but also the vision of people like Stephen Hawking perhaps gave that impetus, that vision to the next generation of explorers. It's a very and you don't even know how many young people in the field at that time got inspired to join physics or chemistry because of his writings.
No, that is true, because at that time, especially when he was carrying out his research in the 70s and the 80s, this was groundbreaking. At that time, not too many people understood the concept of black holes and how there could be a point of singularity with so much of mass in it, because at that time it was understood to be something, you know, a mathematical construct that had been thrown up as a part of the mathematical equations, but does something like this exist in real world, and that is where his research had focused on primarily in the beginning.
Right. So the other thing to note is, you know, there are people who worked on black holes. Our own Chandrasekhar used to work on black holes, and then he worked on relativity. I mean, which Einstein also did. But I think the fact that he could, through this tiny book, which you could pick up at any bookstore in Calcutta, and you could visualize the universe. That was absolutely terrific. And coming from a man who had a severe disability, I think that also, I guess, his will to overcome
extraordinary odds, because that is true. You know, that is what I was going to just ask you. When he was just 21, the doctors had diagnosed him with a rare condition of neuromotor disease. And they said that he had perhaps got just about 2 years to live, but then he defied all expectations. He lived on for another half a century and did some of the most remarkable research that we've seen in the last several decades.
Right, so, you know, it is almost a testimony of the will to live, and, you know, we take our lives much too guaranteed, even though we almost have everything, and he had very little, but he still learned to live life to the fullest, which is not a small thing. I mean, it's even a lesson to learn in the art of living.
Absolutely. Right. Do continue to stay on with us, Mr. Ghosh. Meanwhile, I'm told that the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has in fact tweeted about the sudden demise of Stephen Hawking, where he's tweeted, and I quote, "Professor Stephen Hawking was an outstanding scientist and academic. His grit and tenacity inspired people all over the world. His demise is anguishing. Professor Hawking's pioneering work made our world a better place. May his soul rest in peace," unquote. And also, Mr. Ghosh, if I could just come back to you for one last quick comment. You know, one of the things which also perhaps set Stephen Hawking apart, you know, the fact that he was battling this terrible disease. A lot of people could not even understand as to how he was able to even carry on research in a condition where he was reduced to a wheelchair. But he also had the sense of humor to joke about it. He had said, well, if it was not for this rare condition of a disease, perhaps I may not have become as popular as I did. How do you view that?
Well, I think it was a realistic statement, right? I mean, if you think of public attention, maybe the public was also fascinated by that part of the narrative. So it's a humorous statement, but it's nonetheless real.
Right.
Maybe that drew him more to him. But I think for people who were like in higher education and young PhD students everywhere, I think they were fascinated by the book as well.
Right.
So what he's saying is, of course, you know, you need a hook for a new story.
Absolutely.
And maybe this was the hook. But it did not in any way diminish the other parts of what he brought to the table. He was a brilliant scientist and he was a brilliant writer. And then he had this larger vision for the human race.
Absolutely.
Which was, I think, which was pioneering.
Indeed. We'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Amitabh Ghosh, for having joined us and got us those inputs. Meanwhile, let's also just listen in to some of the excerpts from Stephen Hawking's speech.
I want to report that I think I have solved a major problem in theoretical physics that has been around since I discovered that black holes radiate thermally 30 years ago.
Yet if, as I hope, basic science becomes part of general awareness, what now appear as the paradoxes of quantum theory will seem as just common sense to our children's children. The present exponential growth cannot continue indefinitely. However, to a large extent, we shall have to rely on mathematical beauty and consistency to find the ultimate theory of everything. I think the human race has no future if it doesn't go into space. I therefore want to encourage public interest in space. I have long wanted to go into space, and a zero-gravity flight is the first step towards space travel. As you can imagine, I am very excited. I have been wheelchair-bound for almost 4 decades, and the chance to float free in zero-G will be wonderful.